Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Gymwright podcast. We're doing this thing live. I'm coming to you here from beautiful San Clemente, California. And today we have a very special guest, Mr. Tyler Sullivan of Badger CrossFit. Tyler, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Marcus. Appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
No doubt, man. Excited to have you on finally. Tyler is a 4 times regionals athlete, a TV show fitness trainer, a seasoned box owner with his box Badger CrossFit out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But Tyler is also a full-time business coach here with us at Gymwright, working with over 70 different clients, people all over the world, all walks of life. And today we're going to be showing you guys how to build your very own 6-week challenge. I know that a lot of you have probably tried things like the New You Challenge, or maybe tried running something like this on your own, but there are some tricks and some tips and some structure that we're going to provide you today to help you really knock it out of the park with these things, because this is a huge opportunity for you as a gym owner to create a secondary input of lead flow and membership acquisition on top of your evergreen offer. So let's just say you're you have your free intro session that you offer, you do marketing to around to get people in the door, day in and day out. That's kind of like your day-to-day offer. This is a great secondary one to add in. So today we're going to break this thing down and show you the nuts and bolts of how to do it right. So Tyler, I know you, reason why we've got you on the show is not only are you a stud, but you've run a lot of these things yourself at Badger, right?
Yes, we do. Quite a few. We usually do about 3 to 4 a year.
Killer. So, and that's about right too. I think a lot of people who've tried things like the New You have said, it worked really well the first, 2 times, 3 times that we did it, but then it stopped working. And my immediate question is, well, how often were you doing it? And they're like, oh, we just did them back to back. What are your thoughts on frequency on running these things?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one of those things that, and I recommend this to gym owners often, but we don't want to tap the well so often that, it becomes too dry, right? We want to create excitement. We want to create a newness, but we also want to really put our time and energy into this program to really make it work and be worth their while, but also our while as well.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's get a quick overview. Today we're going to talk about, for the 6-week challenge, we're going to go through branding your program, pricing and packaging, marketing and advertising, programming, staffing, client engagement, building perceived value, positioning retail into this thing, and most importantly, teeing up the conversion to your evergreen program. Don't just run the program and hope that people who do the program are going to convert into your membership. This all needs to be done by design. So, Tyler, so why should a gym owner care about this? Why is this of value?
Well, I mean, it really, for a gym owner, like ourselves, it really kind of casts a wider net for that audience that we're trying to reach, right? Sometimes the word CrossFit or the word functional or the word high intensity just doesn't appear or be something that we want to kind of get to or attract, right? It's maybe something where they're kind of turned off by. So we're looking to kind of open up the realm a little bit of what we can do so that more people see the potential, right? We're showing them a solution, and then we're using that as our way to really show and provide that, hey, look, yes, you can do this, and this is something you should be doing for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. It allows you to access people who maybe, don't think, not only are they maybe afraid of, if you're a CrossFit gym, of trying CrossFit or of, kind of the things that we, here, in my experience, a lot of people, especially this time of year. So right now it is just about the turn of the year. We're about to get into 2018. So by the way, those of you watching, this is good timing for you. If maybe you've already got something teed up or you've been thinking about doing something like this. But here's, in my experience, what I've seen. A lot of people that we as gym owners actually want access to are the people who are newer to fitness. These are the people that we can really have the biggest impact on. And ultimately, we can keep these people for a really long time. These are the people you're taking from, hey, maybe I've tried working out a couple of times, or I'm doing something and it kind of works, or I'm off and on, and making them truly fall in love with fitness for the first time at your gym. That's a massive opportunity for you from a value standpoint, the impact you're going to make on them, their families, and so on. So what I'm getting at here is that a lot of those people have a lot of screwed up kind of self-talk around fitness. I'm just going to fail again. I always try things and it doesn't work. And you guys all know what I'm talking about. And doing something like a 6-week challenge plays into that, like, well, I'm not necessarily committing for the long run. I'm just, I'm going to try this thing for 6 weeks. And you kind of play into some of that stuff just enough to get them to come in and allow you to show them the real way, right? So the 6-week challenge, we as gym owners, as trainers, you're only going to cover so much ground in 6 weeks, even with the best programming and the best, intensity from the clients and all that. You're still only going to do so much. You're not going to transform someone's life in 6 weeks necessarily in regards to like their fitness goals. But what you're really doing is you're allowing them to transform it in the long run, because you're having them fall in love with you and your gym, and then they sign up for a long-term membership after the 6 weeks. So sometimes people are like, well, it's kind of out of alignment from what I'm going to do. What are we really going to do in 6 weeks? That's how you got to look at it. This is just like an opportunity for you to build the relationship with someone, have them realize, wow, I can do this. And hey, this place is really freaking cool. And I've made a bunch of friends, and you know what? I trust you, coach. Let's go for it. So it's a good way to kind of look at it as an opportunity for you as a gym owner. So let's, and also before we move on, something to consider too. This is a really cost-effective way for you as a business owner to get a bunch of people in at once, right? Because you're basically bulk selling. And not that you should be doing the sales event within the 6-week challenge as a bulk sale, like, hey, and whoever wants to sign up, we'll get to that in a minute, as much as it's an opportunity for you to bring people in batches throughout the year. So if let's say you ran one of these every quarter, right? And you on average are able to sign up an additional, say, 20 people. I mean, what kind of numbers have you done on yours, Tyler, when you do a good challenge?
Yeah, typically we run, when we do these, we sell them out really quickly. But the average number we've seen at our space has been between like 23 and 30. And most of the time it's on the higher end. And, it's great because, again, it creates that excitement. We have a lot of people that roll into the next one because sometimes they're just not ready to take that next step. And so we get a lot of people that come from the old ones and roll over to the next one and things at the certain times of the year.
Got it.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So my point is you have, let's say, 25 people that come off of one of these each time. That's a lot of additional members on top of, let's say you're a gym who's got a healthy 5 to 10 net gain every month, right? So you're steadily growing 5 to 10 people every month. If every quarter you added on an additional 25 additional members, that's massive. You've literally doubled your growth for the year. So treat these things with the respect that they deserve. Don't just phone it in. We'll break all this stuff down here now, but really embrace this as a pretty massive opportunity from a growth standpoint. Okay, so let's jump right into it. So let's talk about the intent and priorities of a program like this. What are your thoughts on that, Tyler?
Yeah, so I view the 6 weeks challenge as not just a way as to say like, all right, I'm going to bring in some people, we get a big chunk of revenue or whatever. It's an opportunity for us as gym owners to be like, all right, here's a 6-week long sales process, right?
Exactly.
To provide and show them really what we can do as owners, what we can do and how we're going to work with them. Our obvious community support, the nutritional support, like these things are going to be like, it's a long duration of a sales process. So we have a really good opportunity to get them in, show them that value, and then convert on that. So like the intent is like thinking about it from not just saying I'm going to have a chunk of change here because I'm low in revenue. It's I'm going to work on these people and we're going to work our butts off to make sure they get in the next thing, whatever that evergreen program process is.
Yeah. And for those of you who are, that's a really important point, Tyler, because for those of you who look at this as this is just like a marketing thing, and whoever, like I said, we're going to kind of like phone it in regards to like, yeah, we'll put them at a time slot that sucks. We'll, we're not going to give them that much attention, and they're buying it at a cheaper rate anyway. We'll show you how to address all of that in this episode, because you should really be, for those 6 weeks, putting a ton of energy into building meaningful relationships with each and every person in there. Just like you do with a good intro session where you've got a killer sales process where you're like legitimately connecting with someone about what's important to them. You're doing the same thing, but you have 6 weeks to do it. So making sure that you really have a set beginning, middle, and end to where it's like we're setting expectations, we're slightly exceeding those expectations. We have an offer teed up at the end that we've been building value towards the whole way through. Super important. All right, so let's go to branding your program. In my experience, whenever you give it some more personality than just like, hey, we're doing a 6-week challenge, or it's a 6-week transformation challenge is like the most common thing. But you really look at it as like, hey, look, we're going to brand this by season, for example, like the New Year's Jumpstart challenge, or the bikini prep program, or stuff like you give it a name. And of course, you can just brand it as something general for your gym, like it's our active fitness accelerator program, whatever the hell you call it, and just brand it to the gym. Giving it a name and giving that some energy, and really putting a little bit of design work into either putting together a little logo or like almost like a brand for each challenge. Doesn't have to be over the top, but a little bit of energy goes a really long way with these programs. Tyler, do you guys do anything like that with yours?
Yeah, I mean, we've recognized that in this space, we're trying to show what we're doing with this challenge, meaning like the name of our challenge, we call ours a boot camp. And it's worked really well because it's one of those things that we didn't have to re-educate with.
Yep.
But also people understand that and the connotation with that. But it's just flipping it. It's on the upside down, so to speak, to what we do and how we do boot camp, right? Mm-hmm. But it's people understand it. We have the appropriate imaging with it. We have the appropriate language, and the types of things that we're in the crowd we're trying to attract really means a lot with and it correlates well with what the name should be for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, that's a good point. Using certain things like even boot camp, which maybe come off as a bit of a turnoff to your more traditionalist CrossFit gym owner. Don't sweat those kinds of details too much, because at the end of the day, a good boot camp is pretty similar to what we do. It's not that far off, and you can create one that's based on your principles. I mean, you don't necessarily want anybody overhead squatting with a barbell per se, but stripping it down to, dumbbells, kettlebells, body weight, rowers, and things like that, you can cover a ton of ground, and they will still think it's a boot camp, because remember, most people don't know what you know. They don't know the difference between methodologies, or like what one boot camp is versus another. And yours is just a really good damn boot camp, because it's based on legit training principles. And really, you're also, this is basically like a 6-week on-ramp program. Right? We're building value. We're introducing them to what we do in a way that sets the table for our long-term membership. And, when you're, excuse me, lost my train of thought, but when you look at it from that perspective, it has a lot more value. So.
Yeah, for sure. I want to point, we all can do the types of programming that we want to eventually, like obviously what our service offering is, right? So it's just really, in the CrossFit world, let's say, we're just going to scale it down to appropriate levels for that person who's literally just never done anything before, right? So it's just, it can be, regardless of what you think a boot camp is, whether it's like with pink dumbbells or with bars, it can be whatever you want it to be so that it's best for them,
Yep, no doubt. Now, what about pricing and packaging? I think this is a big part of where people kind of miss the boat, because you got to look at this in a way that's not only just to make money. Obviously we want to make sure that this thing is profitable to some extent. It doesn't have to be wildly profitable, because really this is a big marketing push, if you will, more than anything. But make sure you do the math on, the cost of coaching those classes, doing the one-on-ones with people, putting the energy into like all the little add value pieces that you want to include in your program, and do the math. And don't forget to factor in your advertising costs. Oftentimes people forget that, hey, wow, I spent, $500 on Facebook ads promoting this thing, and I made $500 profit. It's like, yeah, you still just kind of broke even. How do you approach pricing on your end?
Good question. So for us personally, we always try to provide as much value as we can. Again, we have one shot with these people. At least that's the way we think about it. So we want to make sure that the price is reflective of the value that we're offering. Okay. And we have over the years understood that when we have a lower offer or a lower value, we're going to be able to charge a little bit less. But if it's a high value type service, we're adding a nutritional component to things. We're adding, individual consultations, like with life coaching or whatever it may be within the realm of that 6 weeks. we're going to command a higher price. Okay. But there's also the point of, we don't want to be so low that it's, we get these tons of people, but then when we have to move them over to our evergreen program, we have an issue where there's a value difference, right? It's
gap's too big.
You know what I mean? Like, it's so low, and then we go so high with our regular membership that we got all these people, and maybe we just didn't have a rock solid like boot camp yet, and then they see this higher price, and it's like, whoa, It's a little bit different.
Yeah, oftentimes, I mean, I just had this conversation with someone yesterday, and they were like, "Well, where do I even start?" I'm like, "Well, what's your average membership?" Well, it's 160. It's like, okay, well, if your average membership is 160, then and you're doing a 6-week program, at least make it the value of your membership, if not a little bit more. 1.5 times. I think you said you had a metric you like to use, 1.5, sometimes even 2 times, because remember, you are adding in a ton of additional value with one-on-one, like you said, goal setting and life coaching. Making a nutrition component a part of this is huge. Making sure that you oftentimes before and after, whether it's photos or an in-body dunk tank or whatever you're doing, make sure that's all reflected in the value. You're, again, not trying to like rake someone over the coals with this, but you got to make sure that the gap, when you at the end say, hey, look, you've gone through our 6-week program, you killed it. This is our membership. It makes sense to them. And oftentimes, because we can build in so much value into that 6-week program and you're selling it as a one-off package, your membership actually looks pretty good comparatively at the end of it, right? Because you need the jump to be legit. You need the jump of it to feel natural, like a natural progression, and not have this massive gap of, like you said, $50 for our boot camp, and then it's $250 for our monthly membership.
Exactly. And I think like when we have the position of, if we're new to this and this is going to be our first challenge of doing it in-house, perhaps maybe we would be on the lower end, but I like the metric of about 1.5 times your lowest term membership cost. So what if it's like, say, $150 your lowest term for like a 3-month term or something, it would be like 1.5, like maybe as your first go around. And as you get better and more refined in this and you get really good, as we can start to command that higher 2 times that rate. And it's worked out really well for us.
Awesome. Very good.
Yeah.
Now I know I think you've experimented with some like breaking payments up and or having like a down versus something like, how did that work?
Yeah. So like in the very beginning, we wanted people to understand that there was a commitment, right? Like I didn't want them to just show up on that day and it's like, then that's it. I wanted to say, because what we usually do is have a lead in. So we lead into marketing it. So we have an opportunity for people to actually reserve their spot, because in the past, we wanted people to reserve their spot with a lower dollar amount. So for us, we've always done like a $49 down just to reserve your spot. And then the day of the enrollment day, which I'm sure we'll discuss further, comes and then we do the remaining balance of what our program cost is. And we found that like people really like that because it's like they kind of have some skin in the game, so to speak.
Yeah. Let me think here. Okay, so do you guys, with the $49 down, is that something that when you run the ad, are you running the ad to something where they buy it on the spot? And like they have to buy it to reserve it there? Or are they like filling a form out and then you're calling them and then you're charging them the $50 like after a phone call? What's kind of the order of operations with that? Yeah,
and we've done a couple of ways of doing this. And as we've done this, we've learned a little bit of stuff as well. But we've done a $49 to reserve your spot, right? After they do this, because when we market this, we have it where they sign up on the spot and they have to pay that $49 to reserve the spot. What we'll then do is follow up with them and say, hey, here's the next steps. This is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen on this day. You're going to be charged the remaining balance on the day one, etc. We've done that. We've also done it where it's been $49 down, and then what we do is we create a phone call template where we're discussing with them rather than email, and we've just kind of explained it over the phone as well. So we've done email and in-person and phone calls, and both seem to work pretty well, but I think the phone call works better for us.
Yeah, I think as soon as someone buys that initial or makes that initial contact, I mean, it's the same thing with someone who is inquiring about an intro session, right? The game is get them on the phone as quickly as you can to build rapport and to get them scheduled. Obviously, the driver of the call is, hey, I wanted to give you a call to get you scheduled for your intro session as quickly as possible. But the purpose of it, because you could do that via an email and a link, but that would not allow you to build value or build the relationship like you should, because it's going to increase the likelihood of them actually showing up. So for those of you who are looking at, ways to make this efficient, or I've got a bunch of people, as much as I'm a huge fan of efficiency and automation, the initial kickback can be automated, or the follow-up after the call can be automated. But basically, you want to get them on the phone as quickly as possible. And even if it's just to spend 5 to 10 minutes building rapport with this person. Hey, so is this your first time doing this? Have you tried anything like this in the past? Awesome. Can't wait to get you in here, man. We love doing these things. We only do them a few times a year. And just get them pumped about it. Get them excited about wanting to come in, get to know them a little bit. You don't need to hammer them with some crazy questionnaire, because you want to make them feel like, hey, this feels easy. I feel this feels warm and welcoming. And I'm pretty pumped about this thing, and I'm eager to come to the next step, which is them showing up and actually buying the damn thing, right? Absolutely. So coming in, not to mention just pumped about the program. So for those of you who are thinking like, man, I'm going to get, I'm going to run this ad, I'm going to get like 50 people to do it, I'm just going to send them an email, and don't do it. Take the opportunity, build the relationship. These challenges, by the way, are like any kind of like intense growth like strategy or tactic. They work really well in volume if you put the manpower and the energy into doing it right? Just because you're doing a lot of people at once doesn't mean you should just try to get as efficient as you can. Get efficient everywhere except the relationship building part. Make sure you have a one-on-one. Make sure you have before and after, and we'll get more into like the conversion on the front end and the back end here in a moment. But take the time, build in one-to-one relationship building. It goes a really long way.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. So let's go to the next step, which is marketing and advertising. How have you guys approached this in the past? I know you guys have run it completely independently, right? You guys did your own ads to your own landing pages, and you managed the entire process. Can you kind of walk us through what exactly you guys have done that's working best for you today?
Sure. So we found that we need to market solutions, not what we are doing. Okay. And we found that when we push out, say, a landing page, or we're sending out emails with this information, or we're reaching to our current member base, or we're even contacting the old member base, we're trying to create a message saying, this is what we're going to do, guys. This is what we're going to provide you. This is the solutions for us. And this is kind of the process. And we found that just creating those landing pages and creating those emails and things really works well if you're thinking about it from the solution side versus the selling side, Yep. So it's worked really well for us.
Awesome. Very good.
Yeah.
And from a marketing or an advertising standpoint, guys, remember this, like any other advertising piece, you want to build up over time. Don't expect to run one ad and have it be the entire thing. You're going to be far more effective if you build up to it a little bit, build some content that's leading up, educational stuff that you're just putting out for the sake of showing value, so that when people do come in contact with that ad and they go to check your Facebook page, they have the opportunity to get to know you through your other content, because oftentimes people won't just take the ad to the landing page and sign up. What they'll do is they'll see it. I do this personally. I may see something that intrigues me, but then I kind of go on a little mini recon before I follow through, where I may click to their website to check them out, see if I dig the vibe. I go to their Facebook page. I check kind of like the most recent posts just to see who these people are. And if I get to someone's page and it looks like that content supports the notion of that ad, then I'm going to be far more likely to engage and follow through because I feel comfortable with it. So Absolutely. Just a note, you can do some cool educational videos. And by the way, video is the way to go for this. Do video posts of you at the gym saying hey, what's your favorite part about training here? And hey, educational tip. Today we're going to talk about a great way for recovery after a good workout, or hydration. Go with some lower complexity topics for that, those couple weeks leading into it for this content. Doesn't need to be low quality content. It just needs to be digestible by someone who may be brand new. Not talking about how to refine your snatch balance, where they're you guys are doing what? Don't do a movement tip on a snatch or an overhead squat. These are the things that are going to scare them away. Stick to things that apply to everybody, but also specifically provide value to someone who's on the newer end of things. So cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, can I add something to that, Marcus?
No doubt. Yeah, please.
So like this is where the importance, and I tell my clients this a lot, and it's very important that we have a strategy laid out for the either social media or our content strategy, because excuse me, I can't tell you the number of times where an owner will be like not posting a thing on social media and then all you see is the sell.
Yep.
Right? We want to provide as much, as Gary Vee says, we want to keep jabbing as much as possible, yep. Right? So the jabs are the slow drips of our social media content, our email content, our website content. What are we doing on Insta stories? Are we doing anything? Like, there's so much there, and essentially that message in and of itself is warming up the crowds, because you could have somebody that's looking at you from the outside and just waiting for that moment. Okay. And if all they see is an ad or a sell, it's just like, well, okay. It's a lot easier, and there's a much higher conversion when you can warm this lead up. And where the social media or the marketing or the content strategy comes into play is leading up to that point for sure.
Yep, no doubt. It's it's the same thing that we do with all of our clients who we coach. Who we do. We have a Facebook social media and advertising program that we provide our clients to help make them more successful with their initiatives for everything. But that's one of the first things where they're like, well, when do I run the ad? It's like, you don't run the ad until you've built a baseline of just good organic content. If you're just running ads only, you are basically just throwing grenades like over the fence. You have there's no strategy to it. You're not like, you don't have an audience that you're grooming who are trusting you already, rather than the other way around. So cool. Anyway, so let's jump to another subject we get asked a lot about on this. It's just programming. I've seen a lot of people who are like, well, I'm trying to get these people into my CrossFit program, and so therefore I'm going to start teaching the overhead squat and the power snatch and all these things to prep them like I would for like in my on-ramp program. I have some thoughts on that. What are yours around programming and how to get that right?
Yeah. Over the years, I think as I've developed as an athlete and gym owner and coach and things, you start to learn things that work a lot and things that don't work well. And, we have a type of market that no longer is like the hardcore CrossFitter. You're showing up in the garage gym and it's grungy and awesome and I'm doing it. Like, those CrossFitters don't care, right? They're the hardcore type. The quality of the person that we're getting today is a little bit more the late adopter, so to speak, right? So the simpler of movements to them is what they're used to, right? They have, they're doing the simple burpee or the up down, or they're, doing your simple crunches or, whatever, dumbbells. And we have to sort of understand the marketplace today. And that's part of it, that these people are very new, very neophyte when it comes to their types of training. Yep. And we find that like the simpler the programming, the better, right? Very little implements we don't touch barbells, but we do, we do the dumbbell, we do PVC pipe kind of warm-ups and things and movement patterning and kettlebells, of course, but very simple natured movements. Box jumps are even one of those things that are a little too technical for our program. Right.
So again, we're trying to teach them and build value around, obviously what actually works. And yeah. if if you're even moderately versed in program design, there are workarounds, there are simplified versions that get the same or very close to the same intended stimulus using really simple implements or movement patterns with single arm dumbbells and kettlebells. And you can cover a ton of ground teaching a movement pattern that is enough to get someone even ready for a group class. Like, for example, doing dumbbell front rack squats and things where they're thinking like, oh, this isn't intimidating or scary. But then when you get them into a class, you're like, hey, like, remember when we did this with a dumbbell? Now we're going to do it with a barbell. And, spending 15, 20 minutes on a barbell one time can demystify it once they get into your regular program. So you don't necessarily have to build it in to this, and it can still act as a quote or whatever on-ramp program to your let's say if you're a CrossFit gym, your CrossFit program. So you don't have to cover everything in this from a programming standpoint, but it's good to talk from a principle standpoint, around like, hey, this is what we're going to focus on. So we're going to do the squat, and this is why it's important, and this is the deadlift, and we're going to push, and we're going to pull, and we're going to press, and this is intensity. And we want to make sure that from a programming standpoint, we're still showing them a lot of what they're going to see in the regular class, but you got to meet them where they're at too, right? So that they feel a little bit of that comfort of like, oh, this is somewhat familiar and somewhat new, which is going to let them trust the program more. And you can, over the 6 weeks, progress them quite a bit in regards to where their comfort zone may be.
Absolutely. And we always feel that if we train the movement pattern versus just saying the movement has to be accomplished, right?
Yep.
It's okay. Instead of like a deadlift, perhaps some people that might be too difficult, but maybe we're just going to train the hip hinge, and just general patterning. It seems to work better for us as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you guys work in a lot of like partner workouts and things like that to kind of spice it up from a fun factor?
For sure. Like it's fun for them to understand that like it's not all about just working out by ourselves or against yourself. That's great and that should happen. But the partner aspect just helps. And as everyone knows, the excitement, you push harder. It makes it more fun. You start to know that person. You give people high fives, and you start to really bond as a community while getting fit. So like the longer or the partner stuff is excellent. And, throwing in a little bit longer metabolic pieces sometimes is a good thing too.
Mm-hmm. Any other tips from a programming standpoint?
Yeah. Another thing is like first off, we want to create success for these people. So ultimately everything that we're doing in the programming side should indicate that. So sometimes, and we found that even layering, we have some people that are brand new to this stuff and then some people that have kind of done the boot camp style. So we'll also break it out in a leveled perspective. So we'll have like a level 1 and a level 2 in that class. And we'll say, well, here's the level 1's prescription and here's the level 2 prescription because we want to create success. We want to add to their bucket and tell them that, yes, you can do this stuff.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. We used, we had a level system at Active that served us really, really well. And when you get new people in the door, just basically saying, hey, you can do level 1, level 2, just base it on how you're feeling. And you as the coach, and you don't call it beginner or advanced or scaled. Like, don't call it something that makes them feel like I'm doing the baby version. You can call it, we've got 1 or 2, we've got A or B. And based on how you're feeling, this one's going to be, if you're feeling really good, do workout B. If you're feeling like, hey, I'm still kind of beat up from yesterday's workout, do A. Don't make them feel guilty. Don't make them feel like they're doing something that is actually scaled down, even though that's exactly what it might be. And the idea here being is that they have that constant feeling of they're being challenged, but they're successful. They're not failing by constantly doing like, oh, well, all I do is the baby workout. I do the beginner workout or the scaled workout. I'm not doing the actual workout, which psychologically is an unhealthy state to keep someone in throughout this thing.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Cool. All right. So let's move on to staffing. This one's a quick one. Again, I look at it as this is a really important opportunity to build a relationship. So I want to make sure that the quality of my group is going to be as good as possible. So if you, for example, like we had a 16-person cap per coach at Active, where anytime if it was 16 people, that was the most people we would have in one class. And if it was a complex day, we may add a second coach, or if it was going to be more than that, like let's say did like a holiday workout or something, we would try to have 2 coaches, 3 coaches to make sure people still had that same kind of interaction. What do you guys do from a staffing standpoint?
Yeah, so because our programs have gotten pretty large over the years, we've had to add coaches, and for us currently with our boot camp and the types of clients that need that type of attention, we've had to run 2 to sometimes 3 coaches in this program. And we rotate, out some days, and some days are doing 2 days in a row or something. Or I'm sorry, they would do a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday or whatever. We'll have one coach do a Monday and a Wednesday, and another coach will do a Monday and a Thursday or something. So we sort of rotate it out, but we found that the more coach and touch points that these athletes can get, it has led to a lot more success for them, and also just the conversion process down the road.
Yep. Awesome.
Yep.
All right. Next piece, client engagement. This one's a big one. This kind of plays off of what we just said about the having enough coaches so it's a quality experience. But what do you guys do to maximize client engagement for your bootcamp attendees or challenge attendees?
Yeah, I mean, this is, I feel like the most important part because of just, again, the nature of where they're coming from, perhaps, or the experience they've had in the past. Mm-hmm. And, they've never had someone tell them like, hey, great job in doing this. Oh, you're sore. Well, we're going to modify this, right? But just that general structure. So number one is that we create Facebook groups for every single boot camp that we run, and it's separate from all the other boot camps. So, like for this next year, we have we call them, 18.1. We're going to create a boot camp called 18, or a Facebook group called 18.1, or the other ones have their group. So everybody that joins gets added into this group, so we can have a quick way of communicating with them. Right. We can provide them content throughout the challenge or boot camp or whatever we call it. So that has been number one. Number two is we do a lot of communication on the email side of things, so that if we are doing something next week that they need to know about, we're going to give them kind of a game plan of all right, last week is a little bit more of a focus on this. Mm-hmm. This week we're going to focus on whatever, okay? And then we'll also add in some nutrition components. We're going to add in, whatever type of engagement. We've actually, and we're condensing it a little bit, but we started with 15 emails throughout the challenge. We're now kind of condensing it down a little bit, but a lot of information and things provided to them throughout the journey, for sure.
Yeah, this is probably, like you said, this is the most important part, because what you want to do is you want to create kind of a tribe of these people in this challenge. They feel like they're in this together, and mm-hmm. You're engaging with them, providing additional value beyond just providing a good class experience, right? It's a matter of what I like to do is I like to, for one, every day we would have the workout. We'd have a structured warm up, we have a workout, but then we also have a topic of the day. And even if that's just 3 minutes at the end of class, just to gather everyone back together. Hey, awesome. Pass out some high fives. Hey, today we're going to talk about hydration. Here's some common misunderstandings. Here's some quick tips, and you're done with the day. And it shows them that you're providing more value and you're affecting more things in their life, because some of these topics of the day can be things like mindset and attitude, and these things where you can, through example, paint a picture around the value about how this will make you a better person and a better parent and a better leader and teacher and boss and all the roles that we energize as people in our day-to-day lives. When we're fit, happy, and healthy, we are better at all that stuff. And this directly affects that. So I would build in a little talk about mindset and mental toughness, where I would say this is going to not only make you physically stronger, but it makes you mentally and emotionally stronger, which makes you better at handling those things. And for me as a coach, it's one of my favorite parts, watching people blossom, not just in their fitness journeys, but as in their careers and in their families. And it shows people, as they're hearing this, they're going, oh, cool, this is just another good topic of the day. But you're building the perceived value. You're making yourself priceless through mm-hmm. these conversations. And again, probably one of the biggest pieces of feedback when I would then interview people after these programs is that they're like, man, those little talks, those little, those emails that we got went a really, really long way, because it really helped me understand this, or it really, I had this breakthrough. Mm-hmm. Super, super important. Give that some thought. An easy way, if you're thinking man, that's a lot of stuff to create. The topic of the day thing was where I would start. The second thing I would do is I would create a theme for the week, which may make it easier for you from the topic of the day. So theme week 1 could be, nutrition. Week 2 could be recovery, and then intensity. And you can break, let's say if it's a 6-week challenge into 6 kind of important topics, and think about if you were someone who was brand new to fitness, what are the first questions you get? Usually it's what should I be eating before and after, and what about supplements and all that, where you can make that week 1 or 2 and let people know ahead of time, hey, we're going to have a different topic every week, so that by the time you're done with this thing, we have educated you on these and these and these subjects, and you're going to have gotten meal plans. And this is where then your content from an email standpoint can support these topics of the day or these weekly themes. And also you could do, for example, if once you start the nutrition thing, you could start sharing recipes in your Facebook group and create engagement around these topics. It's an excuse to engage with people and to single people out from a conversation. Someone, if you obviously at the topic of the day at the end of class, you can say, so what's your experience been? Tony, I know that you've been doing a lot of training like this in the past. I know you said you've done some triathlon prep. What have you done for nutrition? And then in your group, you can, tag them in the post and be like, hey, what was your thought on that? And create more tribe-like engagement. You're going to see an infinitely better conversion on the tail end of this thing if you put your energy into this thing. And like I said, this is, for me personally, my opinion, the most important part of this whole thing, aside from a good sales process on the front end and back end. This is the program. This trumps the programming piece for most people, because most people don't know the difference between some super badass comprehensively designed program versus something you just slap together. They don't know the difference, but they know when they feel important, and they know when they feel like they're a part of something. That isn't new to them. So ton of value to be had there.
Yeah, and I think like it's just like you mentioned, Marcus. It's if you make this feel like it's just a checkbox, and it's just another thing off your to-do list, and they're going to treat it the same way. And it's like you said, that perceived value, really seeing and understanding the true depth of what we do. It's everything, right? And then that conversation, that door that you just opened through conversation is now there, and you can open up more.
100%.
That's the glue.
Yeah, no doubt. And another piece of this for building perceived value. What else are you guys doing? What else have you built in? I think you said you have a nutrition component, right?
Yes.
How do you structure that?
Yeah, good question. So what we do is, we start off with an enrollment day, right? Enrollment day is before the program actually begins. So if we're starting on Monday, like the actual, the workouts and things or whatever, the day before, typically we do measurements, we do our nutrition talk. We tell them, how to calculate your macros, or what to shop for. We're going to do like I said, measurements and things like that before. And then we'll discuss any sort of kind of questions that they have, about the structure of what's going to happen, what's going to take place. And that's our time to kind of just deliver some of that. And the nutrition part, it gives them, and we tell them we want at least a week to kind of figure stuff out. So we'll give them 7 days, day 1 through day 2 or 3 or whatever. We're going to say, I want you guys just to focus on tracking the next 3 days, right? Or day, 4 through 6, we're going to say, now we're going to try and hit your protein, right? Mm-hmm. And then, 6 and 7, now try to hit your fat and carbohydrates in addition. So we sort of layer it on, and we give them a little bit of time to create success. The end of that week is when we will officially begin our version of the nutrition challenge, and it's a 5-week deal. And the nutrition challenge is accountability through, number 1, are you meeting the targets that we set forth with the intake, right? And then also, how are you doing with the quality of your foods? So we'll layer on our version of it. For us, it's a little bit tailored Whole30, that type of stuff. Yeah, exactly. And then we just add in our own kind of depth to it with, how much you're supposed to be eating as well.
Yep. So this is, you guys actually have a nutrition challenge within your 6-week program?
Yes. And
that's great.
Yeah. So in 6 weeks, we have out of the 6, 5 of them are actually the 5 and 6 weeks together.
Awesome. That's killer. That's actually the first time I'm hearing that. And that is brilliant. Is you're creating a second layer to this thing, right? Mm-hmm. Beautiful. By the way, I'm seeing a ton of great questions rolling in, guys. We'll get to these here in just a little bit. Sit tight. And if you're listening to this or watching this now, feel free to start posting your questions into the comments, and we'll get through them here once we finish getting through the main content. So we'll get to it in just a little bit. And anything else you want to add to building the perceived value for people?
Oh, yeah, for sure. In addition to our nutrition challenge, we provide 2 sessions of free life coaching. Okay. So the person who runs our boot camp, and she's phenomenal, but also combines it with her version or her life coaching certification. So she'll do a session at week 2 or 3, and then she'll do another one at 5 and 6. Okay. So that's one way. We also add a little bit of value. We talk about exactly the things we mentioned, like about their life, anything that we can do to help create a better structure for themselves to come consistently, right?
Yep.
The other thing we also do is we combine it with, in the middle of the whole program, is we add a Bring a Friend Day. And with that Bring a Friend Day, they're able to show their friends exactly what they're doing, what's happening. And that Bring a Friend Day, we can also talk to their friends and say, hey, if you're interested in doing this again, we can, we're having another one soon or whatever. So it just opens up a good kind of conversation for people, with just the real life stuff with, sharing it with their friends. And, just again, the client experience is just critical for us.
Man, you slipped it in, but the Bring a Friend Day, I've also never heard that as a part of one of these 6-week programs. That's fantastic. Bring in, that way they're bringing in a spouse or a sibling or a friend from work. How far in are you guys doing that? And how are you promoting that to them?
Yeah, so at week 4, we basically about a month's worth, right? We added in as the middle day of the week, and we give them a 2 to 3 week heads up, and then we just keep reminding them in the group. Mm-hmm. And it's worked out really well for us because a lot of these people want to share what they're doing and what's transformed in that month's time with their friends or their colleagues or their family or whatever. And we've noticed, even just like when we first started, especially, we've pre-sold our next challenge or boot camp for whenever we're going to start it. Like if we do it every quarter, for example, we'll pre-sell it from the people that were interested in the Bring a Friend Day, right? So it's been really good for us to be able to just engage with the people that are interested to try it out with their friend, just like, you do with a, CrossFit class or a strength and conditioning class or whatever. It just works when you're with someone that you know. Yeah,
no doubt. It's huge. And yeah, so as a gym owner listening to this, that tells you not only that's a great idea, by the way, Tyler, but you also want to be planning out in advance. You want to have your next one already on the schedule so that you have something to point to when those people come in. And frequency of these things, again, you don't really want to be doing more than one of these per quarter. Do not make the mistake of thinking you're going to run these back to back to back and not wear out your local community. Provide some scarcity. It will make the programs better. It will make people more excited to be there. And it actually adds perceived value just all around to what you're doing. If you're always just doing these constantly, like, oh, sure, we'll have another one starts in 2 weeks after this one. Bad idea. Try it. I'm willing to bet you money that they will start to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And the quality of the person going to this thing will get lower and lower and lower. So do yourself a favor. Make them only do one per quarter and have your next one planned already on, this is our start date. We'll put you on the list. We'll send you more info. Even if you just know, hey, it's going to be mid-July. Great. Mid-July is where we're going to start our next one. We're putting the finishing touches on the dates. Would you like me to let you know when we have that? We'll put you on the list, right?
Absolutely.
And now you've got them in the loop for the next one. So that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add to this section before we move on?
No, it's just, again, like it's always looking within and saying, how can I add more value to their lives? Whether it's that's, maybe like you were mentioning earlier, maybe weeks 1 through 2, you're going to do a little bit more of the motivational side and, setting their schedule or whatever. But like really, I've found that creating themes week to week has really given us a direction, and the ability to really capture what we're trying to say a lot better.
Yep. Awesome. Yep. And on a side note too, something that popped up, I meant to mention this when we talked about staffing. Sure. It's not necessarily staffing per se, but it's about like layout. And when you look at your facility and you're thinking like, I can't run, it's hard to run 2 classes at once, whether it's an equipment thing or it's a space thing. Make sure that from a timing standpoint, you're doing these at a time of day that is during a peak or very close to a peak time slot, because that in itself can completely kill the turnout rate for your program. And so if hey, evenings are our best time slots. We've got a 5:30 and a 6:30 class. 5:30 is by far the most busy one. Maybe go for the 6:30 so that you don't have like 2 full classes if you can handle it. Unless you can handle it, if you have the space, run them at your best time so that people can convert over. But put some thought into like what equipment is going to be required by the class and what equipment is going to be required by this program class, and make sure that they're not overlapping. Putting some forethought into the programming of your regular group classes and seeing how it matches up every day. So if you've got something where your regular group class needs all your kettlebells for the workout of the day, and then you plan a bunch of kettlebell work into your 6-week your other class, you could be shooting yourself in the foot. And it just shows, oh, wow, this is like equipment's a problem here. Space is a problem here. Where you with much less of a square footage footprint or less equipment can still look like you totally have your shit together by just putting some forethought into like, okay, we're going to be doing a bunch of kettlebell work in our regular group class. We're going to go all dumbbells in our programming here. So just making sure that you address that ahead of time can go a really long way. We at Active, we had 3,700 square feet. We had a ton of great equipment, but when you've got a full thriving group class and a full thriving secondary group class, if you don't take that into consideration, you could, by accident, make yourself look less professional and less organized than you actually are, because normally you've got plenty of equipment. Normally you've got everything under control, but this kind of thing can kind of shoot you in the foot. So make sure you give that some thought in regards to the timing of your classes and the programming of what equipment is going to be utilized if you don't have, 50 of everything. So just a little side note. I wanted to say that before we moved on.
For sure.
Okay. So last thing I want to add to that before we move on, and this is kind of a separate subject, but positioning retail. This is a huge opportunity for you to also sell some product. If, for example, you sell protein or you sell, recovery drinks and that sort of thing. Simply by, and this is the exact same rule you apply to an on-ramp program, right? You're going to talk about nutrition as one of the topics of the day. In which case, when you give your nutrition talk, you talk about, hey, we eat meat, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. We drink water. We don't drink this. We do, here's the kind of do's and don'ts. Make it very simple, digestible. And then what I always would do is I would throw in kind of like a Q&A at the end of any one of these topics of the days. And I would also sometimes for the nutrition one, ask my own question. Hey, coach, what about drinking a glass of wine every night? Great question, Marcus. And like, just to kind of, make it funny and silly, but I would do that around like, hey, coach, what about supplementation? Great question. Hey, guys, but in all seriousness, this is a thing we get asked a lot because the supplement business has a ton of marketing power. They're great at selling you a bunch of crap you don't need, full of all sorts of chemicals. Like I just said, nutrition is a huge component to your success in this gym. So we want to make sure that we're not putting all this energy into eating well and then putting a bunch of chemicals and crap in our system like after each workout and basically undoing it. So from a supplement standpoint, there's some really good options. Unfortunately, there's a sea of garbage when you go to GNC and all that sort of thing. We stock some really, really clean stuff here. It's the same price or cheaper than you would get at a GNC. You guys interested in trying it out? Awesome. Here, well, let's get you guys some samples. And now you've just woven in like a sample tasting for this entire class. And, do you like chocolate? Do you like vanilla? And you dole these things out. And all of a sudden you have people buying protein and buying supplements while they're in this program, which by the way is them also, you're conditioning them to buy products, but that also is conditioning them to be more likely to buy your membership at the end of this thing. They're more bought in. They just bought this big bag of protein. They've got 2 weeks left in their, or 4 weeks left. This is going to last them 2 months. As simple as that sounds or as silly as that sounds, those little things all play into that final decision of like, well, I've already got myself like in a good habit. I'm making a bunch of progress. I feel great. I've got my supplements like dialed in. I've got like they feel like an insider, right? By doing it more than anything. And again, you benefit by providing them something that's high quality versus them going to GNC and buying a bunch of crap. But you make a couple bucks while you do it.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so now to my favorite part. This is the sales component of this thing. I want to walk through what you guys are doing, both on the front end for your whole sales process, but almost more importantly, what you're doing at the end to convert people into your evergreen offer. Can you walk us through what you guys are doing at Badger that works? Like basically take me step by step. Like I saw the ad. What happens? What's the order of operations? And walk me through kind of me buying, and then we'll address the second part afterwards.
Yeah. So, from the moment people make the purchase decision to say, we're going to come to Badger and get fit, right? This is that's what we're selling, is a high touch point type service, right? We're going to communicate with them. We're going to open the door right away. That phone call is critical. And it shows the dialogue that we're willing to have with people, right? And then as with what we chatted about earlier with the communication in the groups and things like that, but and the in-person and the in-class type activity, and we're doing the life coaching component. So, we're, again, opening up the door to conversations. We're talking about their lives. We're talking about their schedules. Okay. It's important that we remain and we keep doing this leading up to the point where, by the end of the challenge, they know what's going on, right? For us, it's important that we reach to them the week 4, week 5 to, by the latest week 5, so that they have a clear understanding of what we want them to do, what they're able to do also, but then what's next, right? So we individually reach out to every single person in our boot camp with a one-on-one 15 to 20 minute phone call minimum, sometimes longer, it depends on the person, right? And we talk to them, we have a conversation, we tell them what's been really, really good, what's been really challenging, what's been something that that we could do better, or what you think we've done really well, right? So we're talking to them about this. And then as professionals, we want to express from a professional expertise side that, we feel it's best to go into this next step, whatever that may be. Here at Badger, we have many layers. Our boot camp's the very bottom, and then we go into our function, which is like a version of light, and then we go to another, version of CrossFit. So, but that also again opens the door to saying maybe the next boot camp is going to be an option, or personal training might be the best scenario in your case. Right. So it's just, again, we have a sit down. It's a little bit of a meeting for us, and then from there we make the determiner of what's best for them, and then we give them that direction. So we don't want to have them walk out the door after their last class and then we try and reach back to them, right? It's making sure that we are reaching to them. They know exactly what's next, and it's happened already.
Got it. So the second one where you said you're personally reaching out to each person, this is a phone call, you said, or is this being done in person?
We do both. It depends on the person's schedule. Sometimes, obviously, it's hard for them they're making the time for this. It's kind of on an individual basis for them. Most of them it's about 50-50, I would say, but I would say leaning a little bit more towards the phone call, just because of people's schedules and our ability, to chat with them. But overall, number one, best way to do it is to meet them with them in person, of course.
Sure. Conversion is always going to be higher face-to-face.
Yeah.
Than it is going to be over the phone. But that's a great alternative. A lot of times people shy away from the one-on-one interactions in these things, or I even hear gym owners run these things and they have no one-on-one, not on the front end or the back end. And then they wonder why these things don't turn out. So if I can rewind a little bit to the beginning of the process. So when I see the ad, I click through. What happens next? Walk me through, like, if I were a potential customer, like, what can I expect, and what's the step by step? Like, okay, you're going to come in, we're going to do this, you're going to do a consult one-on-one, or is it like a phone call interview? Like, take me through the detailed step by step.
Yeah. So the moment they see, like, whether it's our ad for the landing page, or they get the email or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to sign up. They'll see that, like, most of the stuff that we put on the landing page is pertinent to what pain points they have. Right. So we're going to try to make sure, again, we're selling that solution that we're going to give them.
Right.
And they decide to make that purchase decision, of the $49 down, we get the notification on our end to that they did. Here's the person, their name and their number and their email. Right. And reach out to them with a phone call, typically that same day. And we will discuss with them, we'll tell them, thank you for signing up. Here's, the next steps. If you have any questions about what's happening, and that begins that process.
Okay. And then so what's the next step? So we do the phone call. Yep. Hey, I'm super psyched. I want to try this thing out. What's next? You said there's an enrollment day. Is that the next step? What happens during that enrollment day? Like, what are you telling me about that enrollment day? Like on that call? Absolutely.
So when we tell them in the phone call that the enrollment day is the day before at, X time, right? And in that enrollment day, we are going to work with the group, and we're going to have like little worksheets for them. We're going to have them, identify their why. We're going to talk about their goals, right? We're going to run them through their goals of what they're trying to get out of the program. If they have any specific injuries and things like this, like it's obviously in that phone call. So we get some of that already, but we also get a lot of that in the enrollment day as well. So while we go with them in the enrollment process or the enrollment day process, we have another coach there, and they're running through the measurements. We're doing the body weight. We're doing all those things. We're answering the logistical questions of how many days per week. If you're sore, any injury, like anything that we need to know about. We also discussed, like I mentioned earlier, about the nutrition program, just the gist of it. That first week, at least, we give them kind of the beginning stages of that. So by the end of their first week, they're pretty much ready to roll into our nutrition challenge.
That's awesome. Yeah, the enrollment day thing is fantastic. That's a great way to kind of get everybody together, kind of inaugurate them into this program, set the groundwork for a lot of these things, so that when on Monday, let's say, they show up, you can actually get right to work rather than all these kind of unanswered questions. Not to mention, you can overcome a lot of unspoken objections and concerns prior to even starting day one, proactively, rather than them being thrown out as random questions and disrupting the flow or the vibe of a class. Like during your, intro, or your, someone hits you with a question that requires, 5 minutes of explanation, like in between transitions from, part 1 to part 2 in a workout or something like that. And now you can't address it correctly. So, that's awesome. So then at that enrollment day, that's the day that they're buying, right? So do they show up, buy, and then go through all that stuff? Or is that they show up, they go through all that stuff, and at the end you're like, hey, now if you want to sign up, sign up? Or is it assuming like, hey, you showed up, you're buying? Like that's the first thing you're doing?
Yep. So everybody that shows up that day, we are processing the charge for the program, right? So program, they're all in at that point. So if they showed up, they're all in. Yep.
Got it. Okay, cool. Let me see here. Okay, so that gets the sale, that gets the program going. You're reaching out again week 4, week 5, I think you said, to get the one-on-one going. And you tell them in the front end, like, hey, this includes another follow-up, like one-on-one session around goal setting or life coaching. Do you let them know ahead of time, or do you just kind of reach out to them and be like, hey, I want to jump on a call with you or sit down with you, see how the program's going? I would assume you're laying that groundwork on the front end, setting the expectation that that's coming, right?
Absolutely. In the enrollment day, we tell them about that. We say we're going to be reaching out 1 to 2 to 3 times individually. Yeah. And we're going to talk with you, and we're going to talk to, obviously with the life coaching part of it, and some people, they don't do the life coaching part, but we still, talk with them and things. Mm-hmm. But it's just an individual conversation. Again, it's a high touch point type service. So, we're going to discuss with them, like at the very onset, that we are going to have conversations later about things, and, just expect some calls. And of course, we're going back and forth in class and emails and things like, hey, what's a good time for you, et cetera.
Awesome. Very good. Yeah. Cool. Anything else you want to add into the sales component? Sorry, I have a question. So when are you actually asking for the sale at the end? Like, how are you teeing that up? Do you have a special offer around your regular membership option? Like, when is the offer being made, and how do you structure it?
Yeah, good question. And I think it comes down to the individual, of course, but most people roll into our evergreen program of what we call a function class, which is just the very simple version of CrossFit, very simple implements. So 95% of the people usually either roll right into that. So what we will do is we'll tee it up, and we'll obviously in that 4 or 5 week, that last class, we're going to tell them that, like, you guys are doing, you're doing wonderful. I think this is the next step. I think this is something that you should be doing. From our professional opinion, you're ready for the next phase, right? This class runs, the boot camp runs coinciding with the function work. You can make the function class work, right? So they already know. So by week 4 or 5, with the discussion that we've had, we've already told them, based on the conversation and their goal, that this is the next best step for you, and this is what's going to happen after you're done. Now, some people, they want to try it out. So we do extend the offer of, you can try out the first 3 function classes on us. You just we'll set up the times and days. You let us know what those are going to be. And then we'll let the coach know that you are, just checking this out. So sometimes we can give them that, a little bit of a sweeten the pot, so to speak, so that they have something they can see and what it's all about. So there's a lower intimidation factor there.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty cool things work for that. I think there does need to be some form of incentive to, like you said, sweeten the pot a little bit. A few free sessions of your regular program to see if they like it. I've also seen work really commonly is taking the value of what they paid so far and applying it to like a 12-month agreement, for example, where you say, hey, if you sign up for a 6-month agreement, we'll put 50% of your what you paid for this program towards it. If you sign up for a 12-month, I'll put 100% of it towards it, which basically gives you a free month out of 12 or something like that. To get the longer term commitment. These are just examples, but taking some of that value and applying it towards it, or just an arbitrary value. Hey, you were in this program. We're gifting all of you $100 towards, any membership that you want to choose. And that way there is something to get them to make the decision right there. You don't want them to have the program end and then have time go by where they're not training with you. They're not coming in for another session. And if they haven't chosen a membership yet. So doing this prior to it ending and giving them a reason to make a quick decision is of a ton of value to you. Cool. All right. So let's go ahead and move right into questions. You have anything else you want to add to that, Tyler, before we move on, or are you good?
No, I like it. I think you covered it really well.
Cool. All right. So first question we've got here says, hey guys, I'm hoping to hear a bit about some goal setting for a new group of challenge participants. I just downloaded Tyler's goal sheet and it looks great. Is this something you might incorporate with a new challenge group? We start our Race to 99 challenge on January 8th. I know we covered this a little bit, Tyler, but can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad he got the goal sheet that we have. That is something we provide them. Mm-hmm. It's funny you mentioned that, because to tee off our next challenge, and this is at the New Year especially, we do a Facebook Live within our or on our page that is going to discuss the goals, like their goals, and we run them through the sheet that they just clicked on and are looking at right now. Mm-hmm. So we use that as sort of a way to just have people to understand what it's about. Our boot camp one is a little bit simpler, and we're not getting so granular with the goal sessions sheet. We'll ask a little bit more basic questions. Again, we're going to really have them define their why, what their goals are, and we're going to obviously tell them about the structure of what a goal should be, the simple stuff, right? But it's not as granular, like I mentioned, as the goal setting sheet. It's a little bit more simplistic because, again, we're having that conversation up front. And that happens a little bit more organically face-to-face.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the things you said you guys do was, what does your most fit self look like? Was it past, there presently, or never have been there? But is this the image you have in your head? And how do we get there? Right? So we're getting them to imagine this, whether it's remembering or it's picturing, but using this kind of mental imagery, and then saying, okay, well, how do we get there? And having them say, oh, well, I've got to start eating better. I've got to start going to the gym regularly, get a routine going, and all that is, I think, a really cool exercise. I don't know if you guys are doing that in person, but I remember you had that in your notes from before. Cool. Bob, I hope that answers your question. Question from Joe Teed. Are you guys using a third-party platform? What do you guys think of the advertising practice of offering free challenges that have popped up that in most cases don't end up free? It gets numbers in the door, but it seems deceptive to me. I can answer this one. This is something I've been seeing a lot. There's some people in the space as of recent who are providing like marketing or advertising services around these kinds of challenges that are doing kind of like a bait and switch, where it's free but it's not. I think, Joe, that may be what you're leaning towards. And I mean, my honest opinion, no slight on whoever runs that, but I think that's BS. Doing a bait and switch with your marketing or advertising is just, it's just lowbrow stuff. We can do better than that. We're here to build meaningful relationships, and no better way to start a meaningful relationship with a bait and switch, right? So I'd say go ahead and shy away from that, and actually offer and do what you say you're offering and saying you're going to do. Saying it's free and then saying, or you could sign up for this thing. Or, hey, that one's all full, but it's all BS, man. Just skip it. Do what you say you're going to do. Simple as that. No faster way to ruin trust with someone who you're trying to build a meaningful long-term relationship with than to put something like that on the front end. You're going to be on cleanup for that first impression forever. And it's not really, if you think of like the relationship you want to have with your members, it's probably not ideal. And let me see here. Jerry Martin says, do you try to close them in the onboarding process? If not, when? Yeah, I think we covered that one already, Jerry. Hope that answered your question. Then we had, looks like Jerry answered the question to Joe. Hey, Joe, we have ran a challenge you talked about, and it flooded our gym. When handled right and being transparent takes away the chance of looking deceptive. Yeah, I think, Jerry, you're on the same thread we're at. Question from Hank Ford. We have had issues with people starting the challenge, showing up early and seeing regular classes. They see what they feel as a huge difference in difficulty level between the programs. Should this be avoided through scheduling? Is that valuable to new clients so that they see where they're eventually going to move to? I think your enrollment day idea completely covers that. Doing your enrollment day on, let's say, a Sunday when you don't have your regular classes, or maybe, from a timing standpoint, doing it at a time where you don't have a regular class going, in my opinion, would be better, because it just eliminates those unspoken or then spoken concerns or questions people are going to have right on the front end before they're even doing it. See, the idea would be that they come in for the enrollment day and you can now proactively address, like, hey, you guys are going to be coming in here. By the way, we're going to have our regular classes. We've got a variety of different programs. We have everything in here from beginner, intermediate, advanced athletes, competitive athletes, all shapes and sizes. If you see something where you're thinking like, man, that looks way harder than what I'm ready for, it's probably because it's someone more advanced than you. Don't think we're gonna make you do that sort of thing. We're always going to make sure we give you a workout that's going to challenge you, give you a great workout, but is also appropriate for who you are, where you're at, and your limitations. So if you ever see something that thinks, or you hear like loud bars dropping and people cheering and high five, we have a lot of fun in here, but don't let it scare you. Like I said, we have a huge range of skill levels in here, and we're always going to do what's appropriate for you. So doing something, having a conversation like that prior to them seeing a regular group class, Hank, can completely diffuse that. And you can also say, and take a look around at those classes, because oftentimes what you may on the surface think is totally out of your range, you'll see other people like you that are, maybe just a few months ahead of you. The majority of our members here are people who have never done fitness before and have actually achieved whatever you're seeing here in these four walls. So just because you may not be able to do it now doesn't mean it may not be something you find interested in the future, or you very may well be able to do in the near future. Anything you want to add to that, Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing. I think, again, it comes down to just that, like you mentioned, the enrollment day, setting the expectations, explaining this process, but also just, really creating success for the client across the 6 weeks. Okay. They may at day one see that, or day two, or whatever it is. And then at the end of it, it's like, oh yeah, well, that wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be, because over the time we've worked with them, we've been able to provide and create success for this client in their journey.
Yep. Awesome. Cool. We've got next one here from Rowdy. Is it Rowdy Felder? Sorry, this screen's a little far away, so it's a little hard for me to read. Best marketing practices via GB and IG. I'm not sure what GB is, but IG, I'm assuming, is Instagram. Just like we said towards the beginning of this thing, creating video content where you're just providing value that's appropriate for not just your existing community, but for people who are on the newer end of the spectrum, don't have a lot of context around the movements that we do and that we scale things, and showing things that are appropriate for all skill levels that you're teaching on. Nutrition is a really easy one, because even if someone's more advanced as an athlete, oftentimes they've been doing their nutrition wrong. So kind of debunking things around nutrition or hydration or recovery, or like little highlights for like shout outs or interviews or featured athletes. And again, make sure that the featured athlete you have right around that time isn't some like games athlete necessarily. You're going to get way more win out of that if it's someone who's more like, the type of person you're trying to attract, that you're highlighting or interviewing and asking questions around. Try to avoid things that look scary or are scary to people who are newer. And then once you've been doing that for a few weeks, usually about 3-4 weeks is the minimum for something like that, and then rolling out an ad. So anything you want to add to that, Tyler?
Yeah, and that again, it kind of, like you said earlier, and what I said earlier as well. Just that lead-in process is pretty important. Creating a roadmap for them to understand. We're laying the groundwork for this, and we're just kind of softening that lead with the content you're putting out. Super important.
Yep, no doubt. Cool. I think that wraps it up for the questions. And plus, we've been going for quite a while. Tyler, thanks so much for being willing to go over on this. But for those of you watching, we hope this was valuable to you. I know we've been asked this. Tyler, you get asked this all the time. So hopefully this is something that you can take and pull a nugget or two out of this thing to run your own successful 6-week program. Tyler, where can more people find information about you or follow you and be friends with you?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, facebook.com/Tyler Sullivan, or you can go to my website, badgercrossfit.com, and Instagram as well, BCF Tyler.
Awesome. And obviously this is being shown in the network, our private Facebook group. Tyler is one of the business coaches here on the Gymwright team, so feel free to ask questions in the comments here below. If you're watching this, for example, after it's aired live, we're going to answer questions here as long as you're asking them. So just post your questions to comments below. We'll answer them, Tyler or myself. You can tag us in it. We'll be happy to respond and give you any feedback or insight that we can after the fact. And on that note, I wish you guys a wonderful weekend. Tyler, again, thank you again so much for joining us. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for being a part of the network, and we will see you again next week.